is the Iran nuclear deal, like the urgency of it and how important it was back when Obama and Kerry did it, is it as important right now, or have things changed? Like, how important is it to the U.S.?
Okay, so this is the thing. It depends on who you talk to within the United States. The Biden administration wants to like just get this over with so that they could focus in China, right? But there are some many Republicans and also some Democrats that are pressuring Biden, like, no, we need more from Iran before you could move out of this whole situation, right? So the you know.
But what is giving them the courage to ask for more? And I just want to ask this because this is, to me, as someone who's not as in tune with this as you are, right? I just want to, like, what happened during the Trump time, or since he pulled out of the deal, right? Or actually violated the deal. He didn't pull out of it, but he violated it. But since then, you've had the Soleimani killing, and Iran didn't really respond. You've had a couple other things where they've been tested with, like, pretty intensely, but in a way they kind of showed their cards, or they were put in positions by Trump to show their cards, and it turned out they don't really have as strong a hand as it may have seemed before. You know what I mean? So
yes.
So has that had an impact on the Biden people saying, okay, well, you know what, we thought that it was a really intense thing before. It's probably not that intense. We could probably go and ask for more, and get this done that way.
Well, yeah, that's why Iran has tried to be acting tough and all by like saying that, oh, we're going to turn off the cameras that were supposed to be there. They turn off the, and then they acted like very tough, and they're like, okay, we give you 3 more months, and the 3 more months was just finished yesterday, and they're like, okay, we give you 1 more month, 1 more month.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how important? How
they look very weak. They look very pathetically weak. And there's
so how urgent is the deal then? Like, I mean, wouldn't you go back and say, okay, well, these guys are weak. They're demonstrably weak. I mean, they had their biggest general, a national hero, killed, and they basically warned the people that, hey, listen, we're going to drop some bombs. We don't want to rock the boat too much. And if they're in that kind of position, then, and they're extending these deadlines 1 more month, like, what is the deal really? Does it really have the kind of gravity and the urgency that it felt?
So Rohan is trying to convince the Americans that it is important that it happens fast, right? The reason why maybe the Americans are not feeling the pressure is what you just said, right? But again, the deal might be happening any day now, right? But another reason is that the Americans are not paying that much attention to this, right? So there's not that much of there's so many other things that Americans are pushing Biden on, so that this is not something that the Biden administration is getting that much pressure on. That, oh, why? Like, there's not that many Americans that are saying, why are you not going back to the deal? Why are you not going back to the deal? So they don't feel the pressure from the American citizen. Another thing is that the Biden administration has made it so that its branding is that foreign policy is going to put human rights front and center, right? Mm-hmm. So the idea of them not pushing Iran's administration on its human rights record, if when they had the chance, might be one reason. There are some, again, there's a conflict within Biden administration as well. There are some people even within Biden administration that think that pushing Iran on its human rights record is important when you have the chance. And also another thing that the fourth reason might be that how much Biden thinks that it's important to have do something like this with Congress, and the fact that he's getting the pressure from Congress, not just from his administration, but actually from Congress to ask for more. Right, so that might be another reason.
Well, there's another thing. What about the Israel factor? I mean, one of the big factors here was Netanyahu, right, and Israeli pressure to get this thing done before. Right. So, is that a factor anymore? How does Israel feel about it?
I mean,
has Israel that changed too?
Israel is expecting that this deal is going to happen at some point, right? So, and it's getting ready for that, right? So. They have it's hard to see what they're saying behind the scenes, but the expectation is that they are trying to push the Biden administration to maybe ask for more if the deal happens, rather than pushing for it for the deal happens, because the expectation is that this deal at some point is going to happen, so you might as well change the nature of the pressure, right? But we do need to talk about what are the red lines that is going to be. So by the way, if you're listening to this, you might now know, because I don't know right now because I'm from the past and you're listening to this in the future. So what you have to, if the deal is now has happened, if the deal has happened now, I want you to take a look at how did they manage to get out of these things, right? So I think the three major things, right? One of them is the one that I mentioned, right? The first red line is that Iran is like, don't you dare even bring up human rights and are meddling in around the region. That was not part of the original agreement, and so that was the main thing. And they're like, no, we want to include this, and Iran's people from Iran's government are saying, no, you don't include it. So that's the number one, right? The second thing is that who moves first, right? This is very interesting because Khamenei wanted to. Here's the thing: it's very tough to be on the Iranian negotiating table compared to the Biden negotiating table, right? On Rouhani's negotiating table compared to Biden, right? Because the pressure that the Biden negotiating table is getting from Congress and other politicians in the U.S. is not like it's not like a revelation from God himself that they have to abide by, right? So Congress can pressure Biden. There are some people on Biden's team can pressure Biden to make sure that they ask for more, right? But at the end of the day, Biden's administration has the option to be like, you know what? No, screw you guys. We're gonna do this, right? But when it comes to Rouhani, the people who are sitting on the Rouhani's negotiating table, when Khamenei says, "You dare do this," they can't go and like, "Oh, Khamenei, screw you." Rouhani's administration cannot ignore the pressure that is coming from Khamenei. Everything Khamenei says becomes binding. It becomes like a revelation from God, and the only maneuver they could do around it is to somehow come up with an interpretation of it. It's kind of like trying to look at Quran verses and trying to make it seem like it means something else, right? So, for example, Khamenei said, "We will not directly negotiate with Americans." And so basically Rouhani's team was like, oh my God, how do we do this? Like, this is like a complicated deal and we can't even talk to the Americans, right? So right now, if you look at what's happening in Vienna, there's two hotels just like very close to each other. And the Iranians are in one hotel and the Americans are in another hotel because of what Khamenei said. The Europeans have to go and talk to Iranians, and they go to the other and then talk to Americans. Like, there cannot be, because of Khamenei's,
it's not direct.
No American can talk to any Iranian because of God himself has apparently has spoken, and you cannot talk directly to each other. Even when they can't even have American flag in the hotel that the Europeans are talking to the Iranians. Zarif just recently canceled his trip to Vienna because of the hotel that they were because the Vienna had like Israeli flag up in response to the attacks on Israel. So Israel, like, Zarif had to actually, everything is like minute by minute, people are counting everything that's happening every day, and one entire trip was canceled because of an Israeli flag was raised. Anyways, it's really stupid. But the main barrier that Khamenei just threw out in this whole negotiation on the Iranian team was that he announced that two things. Khamenei said. He said, first of all, we're not going to make the first move. The Americans have to make the first move, right? So what Rouhani's negotiating team has to do is like, how can we because the Biden team is also saying that we're not going to make the first move. You guys have to make the first move. So the natural reaction would like, oh, let's meet in the middle, right? So let's meet in the middle. We take one step, you take one step, we take one step, you take one step, right? That would be the natural way to negotiate, to meet in the middle, right? However, the Biden administration can be flexible. The Biden administration can be like, we said this, but now we're going to negotiate. The Rouhani's negotiating team like, we can't negotiate on that because God has spoken, right? It's not like he said it, but now we can maybe change it. There's no changing what Khamenei has said. So the only way that they could be flexible on that is to try to interpret his words for it to mean something else, which is really hard to do. Like, again, it's kind of like interpreting the core, like scripture from God in a way that makes it more flexible. Another thing that Khamenei said is that, we're not going to we're not going to go back to the deal until all the sanctions have been removed. And so, like, so he wants sanctions, not the JCPOA sanctions, not Trump sanctions, every goddamn sanction to be removed. Even the sanctions that were there before, that were introduced because of human rights record and stuff like that. Like, that was not even part. So, see, here's the thing. A lot of people are criticizing Biden. Like, why are you not going to, like, people are like, oh my God, like people like Kyle Kunsky, why are you not going back to the deal? Why are you not going back to the deal? You should go back to the deal right away. You guys, United States came out of the deal, so you should go jump back right to the deal. You shouldn't be negotiating. You just should go back to the deal. Well, Khamenei is demanding that all the sanctions that weren't even part of the nuclear deal be removed, even the ones that are like had nothing to do with Trump, even the ones that were based on human rights record and stuff, right? So that is a very tough demand. That's a very like the Biden are like, what the hell? Like, we can't do that. These are so, in fact, even if they wanted to do that, they are so complicated. The removal of those things are not even in, when it comes to the sanctions that Trump introduced, Biden could remove those with just an executive order immediately today, right? But when it comes to all the other sanctions that Khamenei once removed, those were not executive decisions that like he could just remove. Those are more complicated. So it would be so time consuming to even remove those ones. So so basically Khamenei is on purpose making it very difficult, unless here's the thing, and I'm not joking about this. The only way that you can become more flexible is to try to reinterpret what Khamenei means by all, right? So this is how complicated it becomes when your leader on your side is supposed to be like, his words are supposed to be like the final say and as solid as a revelation from God, right? Like, so it makes it very difficult. So if you look at what the sanctions have been categorized, the current sanctions on Iran have been put into 3 categories: green sanctions, yellow sanctions, and the red sanctions. So this is the third way of us discussing what is a red line that United States, it does not want to pass, and but Khamenei is demanding for them to you have to remove these ones, right? So the green sanctions that the Biden administration has signaled that they're very much ready to remove are the sanctions on oil and gas, shipbuilding, car building, metal, and wood and stuff like that, right? Those are like, guys, those are green, we could remove these, right? Like, they're like shown willingness to remove them, right? The one that seems to be a tougher thing, but maybe they would be willing to remove, is the sanctions on Iran's central bank, right? Iran's central bank right now is under sanction, and that has made financial deals with all countries in Iran very, very difficult. So that's the yellow category, but that potentially could be removed. The red sanctions are the ones that right now United States are like, no, we're not removing these, and common people on Iran side are like, you got to remove these, right? And these are, again, that had nothing to do with the JCPOA. These are independent from those, but Khamenei is demanding that they also be removed. And these are the sanctions on the IRGC. These are the red sanctions. The sanctions on IRGC and the sanctions on the members of the people that are directly connected to Khamenei, right? And Khamenei wants these removed, and that's this red line, right? The thing is that if they don't remove the sanctions on IRGC, the IRGC is the military arm in Iran that has economic connections to a lot of things in Iran, right? So if if Biden administration does not remove those sanctions, a lot of private, even if the United States comes and says like, guys, sanctions has been removed, we're back to the JCPOA deal, Obama's deal, great. But the sanctions on IRGC are still there because IRGC is supposed to be like it's a terrorist organization, obviously, right? And that designation is going to remain there, so they're going to be under sanctions. The thing is that if you had a private organization, we don't. There's the science of how the understanding of which organizations in Iran are directly tied to IRGC or not is really hard to figure that out, right? These IRGC does deals under the table. It's not really easy to understand which organization in Iran is tied to IRGC, which one it isn't. So it's really unsafe. Like, this is an organization that is under sanction, and your organization, your private organization, if it does deals with an Iranian organization, you might get tainted by just doing deals in Iran without you knowing it, and now you are a private company that has been doing deal with a terrorist organization, and like, oopsies, now you're also in the blacklist, right? So even if you get removed the sanctions, a lot of giant organizations around the world might not want to still do deals with Iran because of the fact that the IRGC is still under sanctions, right? They don't want to get associated with that. So that's the problem. So again, the things that you have to work, if the deal goes through, if you're listening to this later and the deal has gone through, you look at what happened. Did the IRGC, the sanctions on IRGC and Khamenei's council were removed? Did they manage to find a way to reinterpret Khamenei's words so that Iranians can move side by side with Americans, or the Americans that agree, okay, we move first? And also, what happened to going easy on human rights record and meddling in the region? Did the Biden administration become more lenient on that, or was it the Iranian negotiators that became more lenient on that? So these are the three things that are both sides' red lines, and it seems like they're not even close with each other. So the fact that they're claiming to us that they're making a lot of progress, I want to know how are these things are being dealt with right now.
Hey guys, if you want to join these streams live, get your comments and questions read by Ali and Armin and the guests, and most importantly, to get full access to the full video versions of all these episodes, become a patron. Link in the description below.